Welcome to Sec Oops, the podcast created by Ben, Moyes, and Sneh, and powered by Cyber Viewpoint.
Yeah, excited to dive into this one.
Definitely. So this is Cyber Viewpoint Originals, the podcast where we decode modern cybersecurity strategies and real-world defenses for today's digital world. This is the Practical Cybersecurity Series, the episodes where we get off the whiteboard and into the real world. In episode 2, we're tackling the foundation of any security program: policies. Not the dusty PDFs nobody reads. The 10 policies that every business, regardless of size or industry, actually needs to survive today's threat landscape. Because here's the thing. You can have the best security tools money can buy and still get breached because nobody wrote down the rules.
Right. I mean, it happens way more often than people think.
Oh, totally. Like, I want you, the listener, to just picture this scenario for a second. You have, say, a $500 million enterprise.
Massive company.
Exactly. And they have dropped, I don't know, millions on next generation AI firewalls, endpoint detection, behavioral analytics, just the works.
All the blinky boxes in the server room?
Right, all the blinky boxes. But then they go completely offline, like hemorrhaging cash for 48 hours because an intern in the marketing department found a USB drive in the parking lot and just, plugged it into a workstation.
Oof. Yeah, the classic parking lot drop.
Right. And the thing is, the firewall didn't fail. The endpoint detection actually did its job, but the malware on that drive was a 0-day specifically crafted to bypass that exact vendor's heuristics.
What happens?
It does. But the real failure there: nobody ever handed that intern a single sheet of paper explicitly prohibiting the use of unverified external media.
Exactly.
So we're looking at a stack of governance frameworks today to explore the invisible administrative shield that actually dictates whether your technical shield works at all.
Yeah, and that parking lot scenario, it plays out in the real world more often than anyone really wants to admit. Oh, absolutely. When we analyze the anatomy of catastrophic breaches, they almost never start with some nation-state hacking syndicate burning a highly sophisticated, unpatched 0-day exploit on a perimeter firewall.
All right, it's not like the movies.
No, not at all. They start with a misconfigured AWS S3 bucket, or they start with an employee pasting proprietary code into a public generative AI prompt because they were trying to save time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They start with human error. The legal and cultural foundation beneath every single blinking box in your server room is the written word.
The policy.
Right. If you don't define the organizational parameters of secure operation, your technology is just, it's operating in a vacuum. It's just guessing at what it should protect.
Which really brings us to the core thesis of this deep dive. A security tool without a policy is like a speed limit sign with no police to enforce it, or worse, no sign at all, so everyone just drives however they want.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
I mean, you cannot configure a data loss prevention engine to stop sensitive files from leaving the network if you haven't actually sat down and defined what a sensitive file even is.
Exactly. It's a legal and technical dependency. I mean, if there is no defined speed limit on the road, you have zero legal standing to issue a ticket, right?
Right, because there's no rule broken.
Exactly. If you haven't explicitly defined your password complexity requirements or your server room access protocols, you have absolutely no standing, either legally or culturally, to hold an employee accountable when their compromised account leads to ransomware.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
The technology you buy is basically merely the enforcement mechanism for the business policy you write.
I want to get into the specific top 10 policies, but I feel like we need to do some semantic housekeeping first.
Oh, definitely. The jargon is heavy here.
It really is, because if you step into the governance space, you immediately hit this massive wall of jargon. We constantly hear words like policy, standard, procedure, and guideline just thrown around interchangeably.
Yeah, people use them like they all mean the same thing.
Right. And I'll admit, my initial reaction to this, just looking at it, is that it sounds like corporate pedantry. Like, in a modern agile environment with CI/CD pipelines deploying code 50 times a day, why can't we just maintain one living wiki page? Why do we need this rigid hierarchy?
Because merging them creates an absolute administrative nightmare, like a total disaster when it comes to compliance and legal liability.
Really? How so?
Well, these 4 document types, they operate at fundamentally different altitudes within a business. If you merge them into a single wiki, you lose the ability to prove executive oversight to a regulator.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. Let's break them apart mechanically based on the governance frameworks we're studying today. A policy is the strategic what and why. It is a very high-level statement of management's intent.
Okay.
For instance, a policy might say, all remote connections to the corporate network must be encrypted and cryptographically authenticated.
Broad stroke.
Very broad. It is completely vendor agnostic. It does not care if you use Cisco or Palo Alto or OpenVPN. It just mandates the goal.
Okay, so the policy is the mandate, the constitution of the company, basically. Where does the standard come in then?
The standard is the mandatory metric. It is the quantifiable how much.
Gotcha.
So if the policy mandates encryption, standard specifies, we require AES 256-bit encryption using TLS 1.3.
Oh, so it gets into the weeds.
Exactly. The standard is where the IT architects live. It translates the business mandate from the policy into a strict technical requirement.
I'm seeing the dependency here. Policy says we need a lock on the door. Standard says it must be a deadbolt with a 6-pin cylinder.
Spot on.
So the procedure is how you actually install the lock.
Precisely. The procedure is the tactical step-by-step instruction manual. Step 1, open the VPN client. Step 2, select the US East gateway. Step 3, enter your credentials and approve the push notification on your phone.
Very granular.
Highly granular, and here's the kicker. It changes constantly.
Right, because software updates all the time.
Exactly. And finally, just to round it out, a guideline is the optional best practice. It is tribal knowledge documented for the user's benefit, like, we recommend setting your VPN client to auto-connect on startup so you don't forget.
Okay, I get the hierarchy now, but I still have a question. Why is it so critical to keep them physically decoupled in different documents? I mean, if I'm a new employee, I just want to know what to do. Having 4 different documents sounds annoying.
I get that, but it comes down to the approval life cycle. A true policy requires the signature of the CEO or the board of directors.
The big guns.
Right. It carries the full weight of the organization. Now, if you embed the step-by-step procedure like clicking a blue button in a specific software client into that master policy document, you create a trap for yourself.
Because if the software updates...
Yep. If Microsoft moves the button or changes it from blue to red, the procedure is suddenly inaccurate.
And if that procedure is baked into your master policy, you technically have to go back to the board of directors to get the CEO's signature just to update the phrase, click the red button.
Exactly. It completely paralyzes the security team. They can't move fast. By decoupling them, your policy remains timeless.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the standard is updated by the IT director when cryptography algorithms evolve. And the help desk updates the procedure wiki every single time the software vendor pushes an interface update without needing to bother the CEO.
And here's what most companies get wrong. They write policies that are actually procedures.
All the time.
They draft a document titled Remote Work Policy, but the text inside literally says, employees must use version 4.2 of this exact software and click this specific drop-down menu.
Yes, and the second version 4.3 drops, your foundational governance document is officially obsolete.
And I imagine an auditor would flag you for non-compliance because your staff isn't following the written rule, even if they are using a more secure, newer version.
100%. A well-written policy has to be technology agnostic. It should apply whether you are securing on-premise servers in 2020 or, Neuralink interfaces in 2050.
Okay, that's a great foundation. Let's transition from the theory into the actual frameworks. We're looking at a distilled list of 10 policies today that apply whether you are a 10-person logistics startup or a massive multinational bank.
They apply to everyone.
Right. The first one is basically the anchor for everything else. The information security policy, the master document.
Yes, this is the genesis block of your entire security program. The information security policy is management's formal, written declaration that they are committed to protecting the business.
And this ties into the CIA triad, right?
It does. We often talk about the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Yeah.
But for the listeners who are heavily involved in modern cloud architectures, we know that the cloud fundamentally disrupts how we view these 3 pillars.
Right, because historically you achieved confidentiality by just unplugging the server and locking the physical door.
Put it in a closet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, the data lives in a multi-tenant environment on AWS or Azure.
Exactly. You are sharing physical hardware with your direct competitors.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. So confidentiality is no longer about physical isolation. It's entirely dependent on cryptographic isolation.
Okay, and what about integrity?
Integrity is no longer just about preventing unauthorized edits to a Word doc. It's about immutable transaction logs and using cryptographic hashing to prove data hasn't been altered by automated background processes.
Right, proving the data is pure.
Yes. And availability, which used to just mean keeping the power on and having a backup generator, now involves global load balancing across multiple availability zones around the world.
So how does the Master Information Security Policy address all this?
It defines how your specific organization prioritizes those three forces, because you can't have them all at 100% equally without infinite money.
Makes sense. Give me an example.
So a hospital might prioritize availability above all else. If the systems go offline during an active surgery, people actually die.
Wow, yeah.
But a defense contractor, they will prioritize confidentiality above all else. If the schematics for a new fighter jet leak, the business is ruined, even if the servers have to be deliberately taken offline to stop the leak.
That's a great distinction. This document has to answer who, where, what, and why. It basically establishes the scope of your Information Security Management System, or ISMS.
That's exactly right.
I want to dive into the psychology of this document for a second, particularly regarding executive buy-in, because the sources we read are adamant that the CEO must physically sign this.
Non-negotiable.
But in the real world, let's be honest, the IT director usually drafts this, signs it themselves, and shoves it in a shared company folder. Why is the CEO's ink so critical?
Because without the CEO's signature, cybersecurity is just perceived as an IT cost center. It's just a pet project of the tech team.
Like, oh, the IT guys are just being annoying again.
Precisely. Think about it. When the IT director goes to the VP of sales and says, we need to implement multi-factor authentication, and it's going to add 10 seconds to your team's login process every morning, the sales VP will just say no.
Yeah, they'll say it hurts productivity and slows down closing deals.
Exactly. They'll completely dismiss it.
But if the CEO signs the overarching policy mandating the protection of customer data,
it changes the entire conversation. It is no longer an IT request. It is a corporate mandate tied to business resilience. It gives the security team the actual authority to enforce friction.
Enforce friction. I like that.
Yeah, because security often requires a little friction. And having that signature proves to the entire company and to outside regulators if you get breached that security is evaluated as a critical business risk at the absolute highest echelon of leadership.
So for you listening, the takeaway here is actually quite relieving. This master document shouldn't be a 50-page manifesto that takes months to write.
Oh no, please don't do that.
The framework suggests a highly effective information security policy can literally be 2 pages long. Keep it broad, define the scope, commit to protecting the business, and get the CEO's signature.
Keep it high altitude.
But once management makes that commitment, we have to deal with the humans actually using the systems day to day. That transitions us to the policy that governs human behavior, the acceptable use policy, or AUP.
Yes, the classic AUP.
This is what you can and cannot do with the laptop we gave you.
The acceptable use policy occupies a really fascinating space in corporate law. It is simultaneously the most universally violated policy in existence and the strongest legal shield a company possesses.
Okay, let's explore the violated part first. I think of the AUP as the document that basically says, don't look at adult content on the work Wi-Fi. But it goes much deeper than that, right?
Oh, way deeper. It addresses the mechanics of shadow IT and resource drain.
Shadow IT.
Yeah, when employees just start using unapproved software because it's easier. The prohibitions outlined in the source material are very specific for a reason. No downloading unlicensed software, no bypassing DNS filtering, no utilizing corporate bandwidth to stream massive entertainment files.
And I think there was something about personal businesses.
Yes, no operating personal commercial ventures from a company email address. You'd be amazed how many people try to run their side hustle using their corporate Office 365 account.
So the employee who bypasses the web filter to watch a 4K football stream on their second monitor while they're supposedly working is violating the AUP.
Yes. And while that might seem like a minor productivity issue to HR, from a security standpoint, it is a massive vulnerability.
Why is that a security issue?
Because if an employee is allowed to bypass DNS filtering for a football game, they are bypassing the exact same filtering that prevents them from accidentally connecting to a known malicious command and control server.
You're opening a hole in the fence and you don't control what goes through it.
Precisely.
I think the best way to visualize the AUP is to look at a rental car agreement.
Okay, I like this.
When you go to Hertz or Avis, they hand you the keys. You are authorized to drive the vehicle, but the contract explicitly states you cannot take it off-roading through a swamp, you cannot enter it in an illegal street race, and you cannot let your unlicensed friend drive it.
Yep.
If you do those things, the insurance is completely voided, and you are entirely liable for the shattered transmission.
That is the perfect mechanical analogy. The corporate network is the rental car. You are given access to do your job. But if you take it off-roading by downloading pirated software, you are liable.
And the legal protections here are profound, right? Especially when you look at employment tribunals in the US and the UK.
Oh, they are massive. Let's say your endpoint detection catches an employee downloading highly illegal material. You obviously terminate them immediately.
Right, they're gone.
But without a signed AUP, that employee can actually turn around and sue for unfair dismissal.
Wait, really? Even for illegal stuff?
Yes. They will argue, nobody told me I couldn't do that on this specific laptop. And furthermore, you violated my civil privacy by monitoring my internet traffic without my explicit consent.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going. If they sign the AUP on day one, that entire argument just falls apart.
Completely falls apart. A robust AUP must explicitly state in writing that the systems are subject to continuous monitoring for security and compliance purposes.
You have to tell them they're being watched.
Yes. It establishes that the employee has absolutely no expectation of privacy when using corporate hardware or traversing the corporate network. It outlines the disciplinary consequences up to termination and legal prosecution. When the employee clicks accept or signs the paper, the company gains a documented, ironclad legal defense.
So for anyone listening, make this a hard date in your onboarding process. Do not just email a PDF to a new hire and assume they read it.
Never assume.
The system should literally prevent them from accessing their inbox for the first time until they digitally sign the AUP.
Make it a blocker.
But policy without culture is just paper. You have to enforce it consistently.
This is where so many companies fail.
If the IT department knows that the executive suite streams movies all day or uses unauthorized cloud storage, and they just look the other way because they're executives, you are establishing a precedent of bypass.
Yes.
When you finally decide to fire a mid-level manager for the exact same behavior, they can argue arbitrary enforcement and your legal shield cracks, right?
Exactly. You can't have rules for thee, but not for me. The AUP has to apply to the CEO just as strictly as the receptionist.
Okay, so the AUP dictates human behavior, but humans are notoriously bad at following rules, which means we cannot rely on the honor system. We have to enforce the boundaries technically.
Yes, we need technical guardrails.
This brings us to the third critical document, the access control policy.
The access control policy is basically the engine of confidentiality.
Oh.
This is where we move from what you shouldn't do to what the system will physically prevent you from doing.
The actual locks on the doors.
Right. And it revolves around two foundational concepts that are often conflated in the industry: need to know and least privilege.
I want to make sure we parse these out mechanically.
Yeah.
Need to know sounds like a spy movie trope, but in corporate architecture, it's about the scope of data visibility, right?
Yes, need to know applies to the horizontal access across the data landscape. An employee should only have visibility into the data required to perform their specific job function.
Give me a concrete example.
So the payroll clerk needs to see salary databases.
Obviously.
But the graphic designer in marketing, they do not. If the graphic designer is granted access to the payroll folder simply because, well, we all work for the same company, you have violated need to know.
Got it. And least privilege is the vertical access, the depth of what you can actually execute.
Precisely. Least privilege applies to the execution rights. Even if the payroll clerk has a legitimate need to know regarding the salary database, they should not be granted administrator or delete privileges over the entire database server.
They just need to read and update.
Exactly. They get read and modify rights for the specific records they manage. You give the user the absolute bare minimum permissions required to do their job, and nothing more.
The fundamental stance of an access control policy is what we call an implicit deny.
Yes. Zero trust starts here.
You don't start with a flat open network and try to build fences around the sensitive stuff. You start with a concrete bunker with no doors, and you only chisel out a small, heavily monitored hole for a specific user to perform a specific task, and then you fill the hole back in when they're done.
That is the exact architectural mindset you need.
Let's make this real for a second. How does this actually fail in the real world? In theory, it sounds easy. Just don't give people admin rights. But in practice, access control is usually a total disaster.
The failure mechanisms are fascinating because they are deeply tied to organizational psychology and resource constraints. One of the classic scenarios highlighted in the literature is what we can call the help desk exhaustion failure.
Okay, set the scene for me.
Imagine an understaffed IT department. You've got 2 guys and a dog managing a growing company. They're trying to deploy a new proprietary software application, but the software keeps throwing errors because the local user account doesn't have permission to write to a specific registry key.
Sounds like a standard Tuesday.
Right. Now, the proper response is to use diagnostic tools to isolate the exact registry key and grant access to just that key.
But that takes time.
It takes 4 hours of troubleshooting. And the IT tech has 30 other tickets in the queue, people complaining they can't print, executives demanding Wi-Fi fixes.
So the tech just says, screw it, I'll just make the user a local administrator on their machine. Problem solved. The software works.
Exactly. It's a localized decision made under intense stress that introduces a catastrophic systemic risk.
Because now that user is an admin.
Yes. And the moment that user clicks a phishing link in an email, the malware executes with the full administrator, privileges the IT tech just granted them. It bypasses all local security.
Wow. The other massive mechanical failure is privilege creep. I've seen this happen constantly in fast-growing companies.
Privilege creep is the silent killer. It's the slow, invisible accumulation of access rights as an employee moves through an organization over the years.
Walk me through a privilege creep scenario.
Okay, an individual is hired into customer support. They are granted access to the Zendesk ticketing system and the customer relationship manager.
Makes sense.
2 years later, they excel and get promoted to a marketing analytics role. They are granted access to the marketing automation platform and the data warehouse.
But nobody ever submits a ticket to revoke their old customer support access.
Never. The assumption is always, well, they might need to check an old ticket someday to help transition the new guy.
Right. It's just easier to leave it on.
Exactly. 5 years later, this individual moves into finance. Now, this one account possesses the combined God-level access of support, marketing, and finance. They have accumulated the keys to the kingdom.
That's terrifying.
It is. If a threat actor compromises that single set of credentials, they can bypass almost every lateral movement barrier in your network because the account is fully authorized everywhere.
Which highlights the absolute necessity of strict deprovisioning protocols.
Yes, automated deprovisioning.
When an employee is terminated or resigns, the policy must dictate an automated, immediate severance of all access. We're talking minutes, not days. We have all read the post-mortem reports of breaches where a disgruntled ex-employee logged into the VPN 3 weeks after they were fired because HR forgot to tell IT to disable the account.
And that brings up a critical distinction in the policy between preventive and detective controls.
Okay, what's the difference?
We can look at physical access to illustrate this. The sources describe a scenario where a company builds a highly sophisticated man-trap to protect their server room.
Just to clarify, a man-trap being a vestibule where the outer door must close and lock behind you before the inner door will open, usually requiring a biometric scan to get through.
Correct. It is a phenomenal preventive control. It physically prevents unauthorized physical entry. You can't tailgate someone in.
Right.
But the company failed to implement a detective control. They never enabled the logging on the biometric scanner, and they didn't put a camera inside the man-trap.
Oh, no. So if a trusted insider, someone who actually had authorized access, walked in and intentionally smashed the server racks with the hammer, the company would have absolutely no forensic record of whose retina actually opened the door.
Yes, preventive control is completely blind without detective control. Your access control policy must mandate that all access, both logical and physical, is continuously logged, and those logs must be stored in a centralized, tamper-proof location.
So we've established that we need to tightly control access. But to grant access, the system has to know who is standing at the digital door.
Right. Identity verification.
We have to verify identity. And that drops us right into the most universally despised element of modern technology, policy number 4, the password and authentication policy.
The password is, honestly, the original sin of computer security.
It really is.
The sources note that the concept was introduced in the early 1960s by Dr. Fernando Corbato at MIT for the compatible time-sharing system.
The 1960s, that's wild.
Yeah. He needed a way to partition user files on a massive mainframe. It was a brilliant solution for a localized academic environment 60 years ago.
And we are still using that 1960s academic band-aid to protect global financial infrastructure in the 21st century.
Which is exactly why the infrastructure is crumbling. The core issue is that passwords rely entirely on human memory, and human memory is fundamentally incompatible with cryptographic entropy.
Entropy being the randomness required to keep it secure.
Right. We need to look at the mechanics of brute forcing to understand why policy requirements have to be so strict today. A standard 7-character password using only lowercase letters has about 8 billion possible combinations.
Now that sounds like a lot to a human.
To a human, yes. But to an offline cracking rig utilizing a cluster of modern graphics processing units, GPU's 8 billion hashes can be calculated in less than a second. Less than a second. Even if you pump it up to 8 characters with upper, lower, and numbers, it's cracked in minutes.
That's just raw brute force, guessing every combination sequentially. But hackers don't usually do that anymore, right? They use dictionary attacks.
Exactly. Hackers know human psychology. They know that when a policy mandates a complex password with a number and a symbol, a user will take a common dictionary word, capitalize the first letter, and add 1 to the end, like spring 2024 or password 123.
I feel personally attacked right now.
We all do it.
But seriously, people also think they're being clever with character substitutions, changing the letter A to an @ symbol or the letter E to a 3.
Leet-speak substitutions are completely useless against modern cracking dictionaries.
Yeah.
The algorithms are specifically programmed to run those exact substitutions automatically. If your password is just a dictionary word with an @ symbol, the computer considers it a dictionary word, and it is cracked instantly.
Which is why the password policy must explicitly ban dictionary words, ban common substitutions, and mandate a baseline length, historically 8 characters, though the modern recommendation is pushing toward 12 or even 15-character passphrases.
Yes, length beats complexity every time.
It must also mandate lockout thresholds. If someone enters the wrong password 5 times, the account locks.
Crucial for stopping brute force over the web.
But let's be real. If we write a policy that says, you must memorize a 15-character string of random alphanumeric garbage, the employees will just write it on a sticky note and put it under their keyboard.
Yep.
We saw this in the sources. A major government entity had nearly 1,500 officials, all using the exact same weak password because the system was too complex.
Password 123 strikes again.
So how do we actually solve the human memory problem? The policy has to mandate a shift toward identity and access management architectures, specifically single sign-on or SSO and multi-factor authentication, MFA.
Yes. Let's dissect SSO first. The average corporate employee has, 30 different web applications they use daily?
At least. Email, HR, CRM, Slack, expense reports. It never ends.
Expecting an employee to memorize 30 distinct complex passwords is just administrative malpractice at this point. Single sign-on acts as a centralized trust broker.
So how does that look to the user?
Instead of logging into the CRM, the HR portal, and the cloud storage separately, the user authenticates exactly once, in the morning, to a central identity provider like Okta or Microsoft Entra.
Let's explain the mechanics of how that token is passed, because it's brilliant. If I log into the CRM using SSO, I don't give the CRM my password.
Right. You never give them your password. The CRM redirects your browser to the identity provider. You enter your credentials there. The identity provider validates you and then generates a cryptographically signed ticket, often using SAML, Security Assertion Markup Language, or OAuth.
Okay, so a digital ticket.
Exactly. This ticket basically says, I verify this is Ben. He authenticated at 8 a.m., and he has these specific role attributes. The identity provider hands that token back to your browser, which then passes it to the CRM.
And the CRM lets me in. The beauty here is that the CRM never actually sees or stores my password. If the CRM gets hacked and its databases are dumped on the dark web, my credentials aren't in there.
Precisely. You have consolidated your attack surface. You only have to protect one set of credentials. But, and this is a massive but, because you have put all your eggs in one basket, that being the identity provider, that basket must be defended with multi-factor authentication.
MFA. 2-factor. We all know it. We all hate the extra step. But let's look at why certain factors are deprecated now.
Yeah, the landscape has changed.
MFA is based on combining factors. Something, like a password, something you have, like a device, and something you are, like biometrics.
Right.
For a long time, the something you have was an SMS text message sent to your phone. Why do the frameworks now strongly advise against SMS?
Because SMS was never designed for secure authentication. It is vulnerable to a terrifyingly simple attack called SIM swapping.
Break that down. How does a SIM swap work?
A threat actor calls your mobile carrier, pretends to be you, claims they lost their phone, and convinces the customer service rep to port your phone number to a new SIM card controlled by the hacker.
Wait, they just asked the telecom employee. That's it?
That's it. It's pure social engineering. And once they do that, your phone goes dead.
So when the bank or the SSO provider sends the MFA text code,
It goes straight to the hacker's phone. They have your password, and now they have your MFA code.
Yeah.
You are completely compromised.
that is terrifying.
It is, which is why the policy should mandate a shift away from SMS toward time-based one-time passwords, or TOTP.
This is Google Authenticator, Authy, or the Microsoft Authenticator app.
Exactly.
How does that map actually work? Because it works even if my phone is in airplane mode with no internet, which always seemed like magic to me.
It's a beautiful piece of cryptography. When you first set up the Authenticator app, the server gives your phone a secret seed key, usually via a QR code that you scan. Your phone and the server both have this identical secret key securely stored. Every 30 seconds, both your phone and the server run a mathematical algorithm that combines that secret key with the current time of day. Because they share the secret key and the exact time, they both independently arrive at the exact same 6-digit number.
So the hacker can't intercept the text message because there is no message being sent across the network.
Nothing is transmitted. The math is happening locally on the device and
Yeah.
locally on the server.
Even if they steal the 6-digit code by watching me type it over my shoulder, 30 seconds later, the time changes, the math generates a new number, and the old code is entirely useless.
Exactly. It's brilliant. Your authentication policy must mandate MFA for all external access.
Yeah.
Period.
No exceptions for executives who find it annoying.
No exceptions for executives. No exceptions for legacy applications. If it touches the internet, it requires a second factor.
So now we know who the user is, and we know they are authorized to enter. What are they actually interacting with? Data. Which brings us to policy number 5, the data classification policy.
Yes. You cannot protect everything equally.
Why?
Because if you attempt to apply military-grade encryption, strict access logging, and data loss prevention rules to every single meme an employee sends on Slack, your IT budget will explode, and your network will grind to an absolute halt due to the computational overhead.
It's just too much friction.
Way too much. Data classification is the acknowledgement of finite resources. You must categorize your information so you can apply the appropriate level of security to the stuff that actually matters.
Most frameworks suggest a 3 or 4-tier model. Let's use the standard 3: public, internal, and confidential.
Okay, simple enough.
Public data is your marketing brochures, the lunch menu on the website. If it leaks, nothing happens because it's already public.
Right, you don't need to encrypt the lunch menu.
Internal data is the gray area. It's the employee phone directory, the company newsletter, standard operating procedures. You don't want to post it on Reddit, but if a competitor sees it, you aren't going bankrupt.
And then you have confidential or highly restricted data.
The crown jewels.
Yes. This is the intellectual property, the unreleased quarterly earnings, the M&A strategy, the customer credit card databases. This is the data that, if compromised, results in regulatory fines, lawsuits, and catastrophic brand damage.
The analogy here is physical. You don't put the cafeteria lunch menu in a bank vault, and you don't leave the CEO's acquisition plans pinned to the break room bulletin board.
Exactly. You align the security control with the data value.
But how does a company actually do this mechanically? I mean, you have 10 million files scattered across SharePoint, Google Drive, and local hard drives. A human being cannot manually right-click every file and label it confidential.
No, they can't. It requires automated metadata tagging.
How did that work?
When a user creates a new document, the word processor might force them to select a classification from a dropdown before they can even save it. That selection injects a hidden metadata tag into the file properties.
Okay, but what about all the existing files?
More advanced environments use automated discovery engines. These tools constantly scan the network in the background. If the tool opens a spreadsheet and its optical character recognition detects a string of numbers formatted like a social security number or a credit card, it automatically injects the confidential metadata tag into the file without any human intervention.
And once it's tagged, the enforcement mechanisms kick in.
Exactly. The data classification policy dictates the handling rules for each tier. It might say, if a file is tagged confidential, The email server will physically refuse to attach it to an email destined for a domain outside of the company.
Oh, wow. It just blocks it.
Or, if a file is tagged confidential, it must be encrypted at rest, and it cannot be copied to a removable USB drive.
That solves the intern in the parking lot problem.
Exactly.
The sources also brought up the physical manifestation of this policy, which is the clear desk and clear screen mandate.
This is where digital classification meets physical space. A clear desk policy states that when an employee leaves their workstation, even just to get coffee, they cannot leave confidential physical documents sitting in plain view. They must be locked in a drawer.
Because the overnight cleaning crew or an unescorted visitor could easily snap a photo with their smartphone.
Right. It happens all the time. And the clear screen policy is the digital equivalent. The policy must mandate that operating systems are configured to automatically launch a password-protected screensaver after 5 to 10 minutes of inactivity.
It prevents someone from sitting down at an unlocked computer and pivoting through the network under the guise of the authenticated user.
Exactly. It's such a simple control,
Yeah.
but it stops so many insider threats.
This transitions perfectly into policy number 6, because we've been talking about data inside the corporate castle. But the castle walls have fallen. We are moving to the remote access and bring your own device, or BYOD, policy.
Oh yeah, the perimeter is dead.
Completely dead.
10 years ago, the corporate network was a fortress with a deep moat. You had a firewall at the edge, and everyone worked inside the fortress on desktop computers wired directly into the switch. If you were inside, you were trusted.
Today, the moat is completely dry. Your workforce is sitting in coffee shops, airport lounges, and home offices. They are accessing the highly sensitive, confidential data we just talked about, but they are doing it from personal home Wi-Fi networks that might be shared with infected gaming PCs, unpatched smart refrigerators, and vulnerable IoT security cameras.
It's a nightmare for security teams. The risk shifts entirely to the endpoint, the laptop itself. If I'm working from home and my teenager's computer on the same network downloads a worm, that worm will try to jump to my corporate laptop and from there ride the VPN tunnels straight into the corporate server room.
So the remote access policy cannot just say, be careful when working from Starbucks. It has to dictate technical realities.
The policy must dictate the telemetry and health checks required before an endpoint is allowed to connect. This is a core tenet of zero trust network access.
What does that look like in practice?
When a remote laptop attempts to connect, the gateway shouldn't just ask for a username and password. It should interrogate the machine itself.
Are you running the approved antivirus? Did you install the critical Windows patch released yesterday? Is your hard drive encrypted?
Exactly. And if the machine fails any of those posture checks, the connection is instantly denied or quarantined to a restricted network where it can only download the necessary updates. Furthermore, the policy must explicitly forbid the user from disabling the endpoint security software.
The BYOD aspect is where this gets legally murky, though. People want to check corporate email on their personal iPhones, but the company has an obligation to protect that data. How does the policy balance this?
Through mobile device management, or MDM, the BYOD policy must explicitly state that if an employee wishes to access corporate resources from a personal device, they must consent to installing a management profile.
A lot of people hate that. They think the company is tracking their personal photos.
Right, which is why the policy has to explain the partition. This profile partitions the phone. It creates a secure encrypted container for the corporate email and apps, completely isolated from the user's personal photos and text messages.
So if the employee leaves the company or the phone is lost at a bar, the IT department can send a remote wipe command that instantly destroys the corporate container without touching the user's personal data.
Correct. But the employee must sign the policy acknowledging that IT has this capability and that they forfeit certain privacy rights within that specific corporate partition in exchange for the convenience of using their own device.
Transparency is key. Let's expand this concept of external access to a much larger scale. Policy number 7, vendor and third-party risk policy. We aren't just letting employees connect remotely, we are hooking our corporate databases directly into the networks of other companies.
Supply chain risk. It's massive right now.
I hear this fallacy from business owners all the time. I don't need to worry about server security anymore. I outsourced my CRM to Salesforce, I outsourced my HR to Workday, and my infrastructure is in AWS. I outsource my risk.
That is the most dangerous misconception in modern business.
I figured you'd say that.
You can outsource the operational workload. You can outsource the hardware maintenance. You can never, ever outsource the accountability.
Right.
If a cloud provider suffers a breach, and your customer data is stolen, the regulatory agencies are not going to find the cloud provider. The class action lawsuits are not going to target the cloud provider. They are going to target you because you collected the data and it was your responsibility to ensure the third party protected it.
This is the shared responsibility model in cloud computing. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, the physical server racks, the hypervisors, the cooling systems, but you are responsible for security in the cloud, the identity access, the data encryption, the firewall configurations.
And that extends to every vendor in your supply chain. We saw this manifest catastrophically with the SolarWinds supply chain attack a few years ago.
That was a wake-up call for the whole industry.
It was. Threat actors didn't attack the U.S. government directly. They attacked a third-party software vendor, compromised a software update, and used that trusted vendor's access to slip silently into the networks of massive corporations and federal agencies.
So the vendor risk policy establishes the legal and technical rules of engagement. What exactly needs to be in this document?
It starts at procurement. Before a contract is signed, the policy must mandate a security assessment of the vendor. For strategic suppliers, those handling confidential data or requiring persistent API access to your network, the policy should mandate an independent third-party audit, like a SOC2 Type 2 report.
So you can't just send them a spreadsheet and ask, are you secure?
No, you cannot accept a self-attestation questionnaire. You have to verify their controls cryptographically and legally through an independent auditor.
The contracts also need to address the life cycle of the data, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The contract must stipulate a right to audit clause, allowing you to inspect their security posture. It must establish a service level agreement for breach notification, meaning if they get hacked, they have 24 hours to notify you legally.
That's huge.
And it must contain data destruction clauses. If you terminate the contract, they must provide cryptographic proof that they have permanently purged your data from their multi-tenant databases.
And from a technical access standpoint, we go back to least privilege. If an HVAC vendor needs remote access to monitor the internet-connected thermostats in your corporate headquarters, they should be segmented onto an isolated IoT network. They should absolutely not have a bridge into the network segment where the financial servers reside.
You'd be shocked how often the HVAC system is on the same flat network as the payment processing servers.
I think we all remember the Target breach.
Exactly. That was an HVAC event. Yep.
Okay, we have established the rules, we have secured the perimeter, verified the identities, classified the data, and locked down the vendors. But a determined threat actor only has to be right once. You have to be right every single second of every day. Eventually, someone is going to click a link and the alarms are going to go off.
It's not if, it's when.
Which brings us to policy number 8, the incident response policy, the crisis playbook.
A cyber incident is a chaotic fog of war environment.
People are literally sweating.
Oh yeah. If your servers are actively being encrypted by a ransomware strain and the threat actor is demanding $5 million in Bitcoin, you cannot spend the first 3 hours trying to find an open conference room arguing about who has the authority to disconnect the main router and trying to find the cell phone number for your outside legal counsel.
Incident response is a fire drill useless unless you've practiced before the fire.
The incident response policy is the blueprint for that fire drill. It formally defines the life cycle of a crisis: preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and the post-incident review.
Let's dig into the preparation phase.
In the preparation phase, the policy formally designates the incident response team. It dictates exactly who holds the role of incident commander.
Who is the person making the final calls?
Right. It specifies out-of-band communication methods, because if your Active Directory is compromised, the threat actor is reading your internal emails and listening to your Slack channels. You have to move to encrypted platforms like Signal.
One of the most critical elements the sources outline is the escalation matrix. When does an anomaly become a crisis?
Exactly. The Security Operations Center might observe an employee logging in from an IP address in a foreign country they shouldn't be in. That is an event. The SOC isolates the laptop.
Okay, normal day at the office.
But what if the SOC realizes that before the laptop was isolated, the attacker exfiltrated 100 gigabytes of customer credit card data?
That crosses the threshold from an event to an incident.
Yes, and the policy must define that threshold objectively. Once declared an incident, the policy dictates the tick-tock schedule.
The tick-tock schedule?
This is the minute-by-minute protocol. Who wakes up the CEO? When do we notify cyber insurance? When do we retain outside forensics firms under attorney-client privilege?
Let's talk about the public relations and legal disclosure aspect, because the clock is moving faster than ever. In the U.S., the SEC now requires publicly traded companies to disclose material cybersecurity incidents within 4 business days.
4 days to determine the full scope of a breach and file a public 8K form is an incredibly aggressive timeline. The forensic analysis alone can take weeks.
Right.
But the PR timeline is even shorter. The literature suggests that to control the narrative, a company should aim to issue a preliminary public statement within 1 hour of the incident being confirmed as material.
1 hour. You barely know which servers are burning in 1 hour.
If you don't speak, the threat actor will speak for you.
That's a scary thought.
It's reality. Ransomware gangs now have dedicated PR sites on the dark web. They will tweet at journalists. They will email your customers directly saying, "We hacked the company you trust. They refused to pay us, so we were releasing your data." You have to get ahead of the narrative.
Which means you cannot write the press release during the crisis. The incident response policy must mandate the creation of pre-approved, legally vetted PR templates.
Fill in the blanks.
Right. You write the statement in peacetime, leaving blank variables for the specific details of the breach. You get legal and corporate communications to approve the language now, and you test it with tabletop exercises.
Tabletops are critical.
You pull the executive team into a room for 3 hours, you hand them a scenario. It's 2 a.m. on a Saturday, ransomware has locked the ERP system, and the local news just called for a comment, and you watch where the decision-making process breaks down.
Those tabletop exercises reveal the gaps in the policy before a real threat actor does.
Now, how do we prevent the incident in the first place? We look at the root cause. And the root cause is almost always an employee making a mistake. Policy 9, the Security Awareness and Training Policy. This transitions security from being an IT problem to an organizational culture.
The strongest cryptographic algorithm in the world is instantly bypassed if an employee willingly hands their MFA token to a threat actor posing as the IT help desk over the phone. That is called social engineering. A security program is only as resilient as its weakest human link.
I have a major bone to pick with how most companies handle this.
Oh, I know where this is going.
The standard corporate training is a soul-crushing 30-minute animated video assigned once a year in December. The employee puts the video on mute, clicks through the slides as fast as physically possible, takes a 5-question quiz that a toddler could pass, and goes back to work.
It's the cartoon hacker in a hoodie.
Yes, it's completely out of touch.
That is compliance-driven training, and it is entirely useless for actual threat mitigation. The policy must mandate behavioral-driven training. The sources heavily emphasize dynamic, continuous engagement. The cornerstone of this is the phishing simulation program.
So the security team intentionally sends fake, harmless phishing emails to their own employees.
Yes, they spoof an email from HR saying, "Click here to review the updated bonus structure."
That's mean, but effective. But the critical element here is the organizational response. How do you handle the employee who clicks the fake link? The literature stresses the absolute necessity of cultivating a no-blame reporting culture.
This is so important.
Let me push back on that, though. If an employee falls for 3 phishing simulations in a row, shouldn't they be punished? Shouldn't we restrict their internet access or write them up? They are a massive liability.
If you punish them, you activate the human instinct for self-preservation. You create a culture of fear.
How so?
Imagine an employee clicks a real phishing link. Their screen flashes. They realize they made a terrible mistake. If the corporate culture is punitive, that employee is terrified of losing their job. So they don't call the help desk. They quietly close their laptop, push it away, and pray nothing happens.
Meanwhile, the malware is silently establishing a foothold, escalating privileges, and moving laterally across the network for 3 weeks, entirely undetected because the only person who knew it happened was too scared to speak up.
Exactly. You have turned a human sensor into a vulnerability. You want a culture where the employee feels empowered to pick up the phone instantly and say, "Hey, SOC, I messed up. I clicked something weird."
That early warning is huge.
That early detection is the holy grail of incident response. The security awareness policy should focus on positive reinforcement, reward employees who report the simulations, and mandate role-based training. A standard employee gets basic anti-phishing training, but a software developer must receive advanced training on secure coding practices to prevent SQL injection vulnerabilities.
Shift the culture from compliance to vigilance. We have reached the final pillar, Policy 10, the Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Policy, or DR. If incident response is how you put out the fire while the building is burning, disaster recovery is how you rebuild the house from the ashes.
This is the ultimate safety net. What happens when the ransomware succeeds? What happens when a hurricane destroys the primary data center? The DR policy dictates the technical resurrection of the business.
And this policy is governed by two mathematical metrics that must be defined by the executive suite, not the IT department, right?
Nah.
RTO and RPO. Let's define the math. RTO is the recovery time objective. This is the stopwatch. From the moment the servers go dark, how long can the business survive before it goes bankrupt?
It's a pure financial calculation. If Amazon goes offline for 1 minute, they lose millions of dollars. Their RTO must be measured in seconds. If a local accounting firm goes offline, they might lose productivity, but they won't go out of business if they're down for 48 hours.
The RTO dictates the architecture budget. If your RTO is 0, meaning no downtime is acceptable, you must invest in fully synchronous, mirrored data centers running hot architectures. If your RTO is a week, you can rely on cold backups stored off-site, which is vastly cheaper.
And RPO is the recovery point objective. This isn't about time offline. This is about data loss.
Okay, break that down.
It asks, how far back in time are you willing to go when you restore? If you only run tape backups every night at midnight and your database corrupts at 11:59 p.m. the following night, you just lost 24 hours of transactions. Is the business capable of manually re-entering 24 hours of lost data?
Probably not.
If you're a high-frequency trading firm, losing 1 minute of transactional data is catastrophic. Your RPO is milliseconds, requiring asynchronous block-level replication to a secondary site.
The executive board has to sign off on these metrics because they directly impact the bottom line. But here is the catch with disaster recovery, and the sources hammered this home: backup verification. The RTO and RPO mean nothing if the backup data is corrupted.
The IT industry has a grim joke. You don't actually have a backup until you've successfully restored from it.
Ouch.
Until then, you just have a theoretical copy of your data.
I've seen companies pay $500,000 in ransomware because when they went to restore their backups, they realized the backup software had been silently failing for 6 months, and they had been backing up corrupted, empty files.
It's tragic. The disaster recovery policy must explicitly mandate regular, rigorous restoration testing. You don't just check the log file that says backup successful.
Yeah.
You physically take the backup data, restore it to an isolated sandbox environment, and verify that the database mounts, the application launches, and the data is readable.
Furthermore, the policy must address immutable backups. Modern ransomware actively seeks out backup servers and encrypts the backups first before encrypting the primary data to eliminate your safety net.
Yes.
So the policy must require that backups are logically separated, air-gapped, and immutable, meaning that once the backup is written, it cannot be altered or deleted by anyone, not even the domain administrator, for a set period of time.
It has to be untouchable.
All right, we have constructed the top 10 policies. We have this beautifully curated stack of comprehensive documents that cover everything from CEO signatures to immutable backups. But this brings us to the final section of our outline, and perhaps the most important question of the entire deep dive. Why do organizations that possess all 10 of these policies still fail spectacularly?
Because they treat policy creation as a one-time project rather than a life cycle.
Right. They write it and forget it.
The typical corporate behavior is to hire an expensive consultant, write the documents, print them out, put them in a pristine 3-ring binder, and stick the binder on a shelf to show to an auditor once a year. The policies become static artifacts.
Meanwhile, the business adopts 3 new cloud platforms, transitions to a fully remote workforce, and faces a completely new class of AI-generated threats. The static policy is instantly decoupled from operational reality.
The sources outline a methodology to prevent this, the PDCA model. Plan, do, check, act. It's a continuous loop borrowed from quality management systems.
How does that loop work?
Plan is the initial drafting of the policy based on risk assessment. Do is the implementation of the technical controls, buying the firewall, deploying the MFA tokens. But check is where most organizations fail. This involves continuous auditing and gap analysis.
So you have to constantly test if the rules are actually being followed.
You must regularly measure your actual operational technical controls against the mandates written in your policies to identify the divergence.
So if my access control policy mandates that all third-party access is reviewed quarterly, but the gap analysis reveals that the IT team hasn't reviewed the vendor VPN logs in over a year, I have identified a critical gap.
And once you find that gap, you categorize the state of the policy. The framework suggests categorizing them as acceptable, salvageable, or missing.
An acceptable policy is functioning as intended. A salvageable policy might just need a procedural update like shifting the password length from 8 to 12 characters to reflect new computational realities. And a missing policy means you have deployed a new technology, say, allowing employees to use GitHub Copilot for coding, but you completely fail to write any governance rules around what proprietary code they are allowed to feed into the AI.
Which leads to the act phase of the loop. You take the results of that gap analysis and launch targeted remediation projects. You update the policy, retrain the staff, and deploy new controls, and then the loop begins again.
Another massive reason the lifecycle breaks down is a failure in communication. It's the buy-in problem. If the IT director writes a policy filled with dense, impenetrable technical jargon, the executive suite will tune out and the general workforce will simply ignore it.
Security professionals have to become bilingual. You must translate technical mechanics into business risk.
That's a great way to put it.
If you are presenting a data classification update to the board, you do not say, "We need to deploy SHA 256 cryptographic hashing across all port 443 transit to prevent man-in-the-middle packet sniffing."
The CFO will stare at you blankly and deny the budget request because they have no idea what you just said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to say, "We need to encrypt our customer financial data while it is moving across the internet. If we don't and it is intercepted, we face a $5 million GDPR fine. We violate our PCI DSS compliance, which means we lose the ability to process credit cards and we will suffer irreparable brand damage."
You frame it around revenue, compliance, and reputation. You keep the dense technical specifications, the SHA 256 requirement, in the standard document for the engineers. You keep the policy document focused on the business imperative.
That translation is the difference between a security program that is viewed as an annoying roadblock and a security program that is embraced as a fundamental pillar of corporate strategy.
Let's synthesize everything for you, the listener. We just walked through the architectural blueprints for an enterprise-grade security program. 10 massive interconnected policies. If you look at this list and realize your organization is missing half of them, do not panic.
Seriously, don't panic.
Do not go back to your office tomorrow, lock your door, and attempt to write 100 pages of governance documentation in a vacuum. If you try to drop 10 new policies on your workforce simultaneously, the organization will reject it like a bad organ transplant.
It'll rebel.
Start small. Start with the foundation. Write the master information security policy. Keep it to 1 or 2 pages. Define your commitment to protecting the business. Take it to the CEO. Explain the business risk. Get their physical signature on it. Once that foundation is poured, you have the executive authority to start building the walls, the acceptable use, the access control, the incident response.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought that builds on the trajectory of the frameworks we've analyzed today.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive discussing policies as written rules governing human behavior. We write a PDF, we make a human read it, and we hope the human remembers to follow it. But as corporate networks rapidly shift towards zero-trust architectures, software-defined perimeters, and highly automated cloud environments, we are approaching a paradigm shift where policy will no longer exist primarily as written text. Policy is becoming code.
Wait, policy as code?
Yes. If a written policy currently attempts to define the boundary of acceptable human behavior, we must ask, how long until AI engines dynamically enforce a personalized real-time perimeter around every single employee?
Based on what?
Behavioral biometrics. We are moving toward continuous behavioral authentication. The system won't just ask for your password. It'll analyze your typing cadence, your mouse movements, the time of day you normally work, and the specific APIs you usually call.
Oh, wow.
If the AI detects that your typing rhythm has subtly shifted, or you are suddenly querying a database you haven't touched in 6 months, the policy as code will instantly autonomously revoke your access, assuming your session has been hijacked.
That's incredible.
The era of the static PDS is ending. The written word is dissolving into algorithmic enforcement, something to mull over as you prepare your organization for the next decade of defense.
That wraps up this episode of SecOps, powered by Cyber Viewpoint. Policies aren't glamorous. They're not 0 days or AI-powered threat detection, but they are the reason some organizations survive a breach and others don't. Until next time, write the policy, get the signature, and actually read the thing.